Narrative begins with a couple named Mia and Nico, both of whom are seen fleeing their nation illegally. Actually, they were both residing in that nation, which had been at war with the surrounding countries for a long time. As a result, the country had a progressive food scarcity, which prompted the government to begin killing old people, children, and even pregnant women in order to remove the food shortfall. That is how Mia and Nico's daughter died. And now, in order to save their lives, they were both quietly departing the nation and heading towards Ireland. After a while, we notice that their agent takes them all into a container and places them all in it. These containers are all on ships. They were on their way to Ireland by sea, and we saw that, in addition to Maya and Nico, there were many other individuals in the container who were leaving the nation, and we later learned that Mia is a 9-month pregnant lady, which possesses the ability to give birth at any time in the future. Now, after some time, their container arrives at the port via truck, where the door of the container is abruptly opened, and numerous people rush into it. They attempt to push him into the container, and in the ensuing chaos, Mia and others become involved, forcing Nico to go to another container. Mia is terrified as a result of this occurrence, and as soon as the container is closed, she phones Nico, who urges her not to lose confidence, since he will come to her once she reaches ship. Mia calms down after hearing Nico's heart. Therefore, Maya's container is brought to the port after some time. He arrives at the port, where his ship is scheduled to depart. But first he must pass through a checkpoint where the police will search the container. Now, when a police officer opens the container and sees them, he sees no one. There was a hidden room within the container where all those individuals were hiding, but the police officer was also extremely smart, and he knew that people were hiding there, so he warned them to come out on their own or else. He was going to execute them when a lady saw him come out of the secret chamber, but Mia had climbed on top of 2 large boxes put there, which were placed in a container. When the officer noticed the people, he placed him in the compartment. As soon as it opened, every one of the people standing there, whether adults or children, were shot one by one, and the policemen dragged all of those people's bodies out of the container and flung them out, but Mia was still in boxes. She was secure up there. After a while, all of the cops came out of the container and shut it, and Mia was still sitting in there, terrified. Mia's container is now aboard the ship after some time. Mia's ship sets off for Ireland, where she finds herself in a container. She examines the stuff laying about and discovers food, a drill machine, and other goods such as a phone. Mia is now asleep once it has darkened. Then, in the middle of the night, Mia wakes up because his container is violently shaking. And as soon as she glances out of a hole cut in the container, she realizes that her ship is in the middle of a sea storm. But the storm becomes larger and larger, and the same thing happens in the end. It was believed that the entire ship might capsize, causing all of the containers on board to tumble into the water one after the other. And as soon as Mia's container falls into the water, she receives a severe shock, causing her head to pain and her awareness to fade. Mia opens her eyes after some time, and she sees all of the boxes in the container are strewn about, and some water enters the container as well. When Mia looks out the hole in the container after that, all he sees is the sea. Mia becomes terrified as she witnesses all of this. She feels frightened and attempts to call her husband Nico by pulling out her phone, but the screen is so badly smashed that it does not function at all. Meanwhile, Mia's eyes caught sight of her in the bottom of the container. Water was constantly rushing in from the sea through the 2 obvious breaches, and if Mia did not act immediately, the container would sink. That's why Mia was going through each box in the container one by one. Some of them had plastic boxes, some had clothing, yet others had TVs, still others had simply earphones, and still others had spirits bottles. Then Mia finds a tape and closes both of them with it, and all of a sudden, Mia hears some people shouting from outside, and when she looks outside, she realizes that it is the same container in which Nico is traveling. But that container sinks right in front of Mia's eyes, where Mia was repeatedly trying to talk to Nico by calling him from a mother phone. But even that had no effect. Witnessing Nico's death in front of Maya's eyes, she was absolutely saddened, and her grief was so intense that she considered suicide once. But then, remembering her kid, she pushed the notion away. She spent the entire night there. When Mia awoke the next morning, she saw that her container had filled with even more water. However, the tape had little impact, so Mia utilized that plastic box this time. She takes out some rubber and fills it with the perforations, which causes the container to stop filling with water. Mia manages to get the water out through another hole, and then an unknown call comes on Mia's other phone. And this call was from Nico. And Nico tells him that he was not on that ship, on which Maya's container was, and then the story goes that Mia comes back to life. Mia then informs Nico about it. Now she is stuck inside a container in the middle of the sea, and Nico pledges to come and rescue her. Mia begins to experience abdominal ache as soon as Nico hangs off the phone, implying that Maya is pregnant. She was about to give birth to her kid at any moment when a storm began to form in the sea, and the atmosphere within the container began to deteriorate, with the entire container violently shaking owing to the storm. At the same moment, water was being poured into the container, and in the middle of the chaos, Mia's daughter Noha was born, and Maya cared for her daughter alone, despite the pain. After that, it's the dawn of the next day. We observe that not only was Noha sobbing, but also Mia's meal was almost gone, and Mia had the brilliant idea of drilling a hole in the top of the container. Mia then begins drilling it in the container, but her drill machine breaks down halfway through, prompting Maya to try to cut the container with a little knife. However, cutting such a thick iron with such a little knife causes it to become caught in Maya's hands, but Mia eventually places it in a container. She succeeds in cutting the container, and Mia feels very glad when she sees her come out of the container and sitting beneath the open sky, since she had been waiting for Sun to do it for a long time. Mia then takes her daughter there. She then begins to cry, and Mia notices some fish in the sea, which she attempts to prepare, but she is unable to catch even a single fish at first. Mia notices an aircraft soaring in the sky at this moment. After that, she was attempting to smash the TV screen and shine it at the plane, but the flesh of her leg was ripped by the edge of the iron, causing Mia to feel a lot of agony and now desire to stop the bleeding. Mia first cleans her wounds with alcohol before applying sutures, which causes Mia a great deal of agony. Mia then has the bright idea of making a net out of those airphones and then cooking those fish. Mia's dinner was being prepared with fish, and Mia was making drinking arrangements by collecting rainwater, and the flood was running farther with the assistance of milk. Now consider this. They spent their days doing the same thing, but with each passing day, Mia became more and more depressed since she didn't know how long it would go on like this. Then one night, Mia received a call from Nico. He informs her that he was on his way to her from a ship, but he was apprehended by the police and shot while fleeing. His blood has gotten so powerful that he may no longer support her. In the end, Mia forces Nico to speak to her daughter, Noha, before he dies. Mia is distraught after hearing this since she doesn't know what to do anymore, but she has to survive for her kid. Mia was only living since she wants to see her child secure. The following morning arrives, and Mia pulls out a little plastic package. She begins tiny preparations now in order to save Noha in any emergency event. While building the boat at night, it unexpectedly begins filling the container with water by itself, prompting Mia to go fetch the vital supplies. He is tossed inside a container, where his legs become caught, and the container sinks into the water after a while. Noah, on the other hand, gets hurled from the container by the sea's waves with the assistance of his boat. On the other hand, Mia somehow frees herself and takes her out of the container. And first of all, she goes to Noah, where she sees that her daughter is there. Okay, now she's going to swim the next morning with the help of a small boat. But Mia's condition was worsening, and in this way she was not going to survive for long. That's why we see that from there. Some passing fishermen spot her tiny baby and assist Nova and her mother in removing her from the vast sea. And as soon as Maya regains consciousness, the first thing she does is take news of her daughter, where they see that she is alive. Finally, she arrived in Ireland since those fishermen were Irish, and by struggling against her circumstances for nearly a month. Mia not only saved her own life, but also that of her daughter. This was the whole story of the film Nowhere. How did you like this story? Please tell us in the comments.